What would you do if you found yourself stuck in an endless time loop, waking up every morning in the same elevator, in the same embarrassing situation, completely naked? How did it all begin, and what would it take to break free? Let's dive into this intriguing story to uncover the truth. The story begins with Rob, a carefree and easygoing teacher who doesn't take life too seriously. With his wedding just a day away, you'd think he'd be focused and punctual. But instead, Rob's laid-back nature leads him to run late for his flight to the wedding destination. By the time he finally arrives at the airport, he discovers he's missed the plane. Waiting for him at the terminal is his frustrated fiancée Megan, who has been patiently hoping he'd show up. Always the responsible one, Megan has already booked tickets for the next flight. Relieved yet slightly embarrassed, Rob joins her, and the two eventually board the rescheduled flight together. Once they land at their destination, they head straight to the church where their wedding is set to take place the next day. They've arrived to rehearse and make sure everything goes smoothly for the big event. However, not everything is as harmonious as it seems. Megan's father, Mr. Swap, is far from thrilled about the match. He sees Rob's carefree attitude as a red flag, doubting his ability to handle the responsibilities of marriage. With a stern warning, he tells Rob, "I don't want any mishaps tomorrow. Everything must go perfectly. I delivered the invitations myself yesterday, and I expect this wedding to be flawless." After some time, the families learn that a powerful company is attempting to take over their entire business. Concerned, Mr. Swap immediately leaves to address the issue. Meanwhile, after completing a few more wedding rehearsals, both families return to the hotel. At the hotel, Megan's best friend Vicky greets them warmly, while Rob reconnects with his own best friend, Benjamin. Benjamin seizes the opportunity to once again urge Rob to start taking life seriously. "Your wedding is tomorrow, and you haven't even memorized your vows yet," he reminds him. But true to form, Rob brushes it off, insisting with his usual nonchalance that he'll figure it out when the time comes. As they talk, Megan's ex-boyfriend, Cody, arrives in a flashy, expensive car. The sight of Cody immediately irritates Rob, but he keeps his emotions in check, knowing he can't say anything since it was Megan herself who invited Cody to the wedding. Megan then departs with her friends for her bachelorette party, leaving Rob feeling even more unsettled. Benjamin, sensing Rob's frustration, suggests they stay at the hotel and work on writing his vows for the big day. But Rob, as always, downplays the importance of preparation and instead convinces Benjamin to join him for drinks. The day of Rob's wedding finally arrives. As the church bells ring in the morning, Rob wakes up to a shocking discovery. He's in an elevator, completely naked. Before he can make sense of the situation, the elevator doors open and he's met with startled stares. One man even starts taking pictures of him. Embarrassed and confused, Rob desperately tries to cover himself and heads to the hotel reception. To make things worse, the manager informs him that he isn't even staying at this hotel. Panicking, Rob calls his best friend, Benjamin, and explains the bizarre situation. He asks Benjamin to come and help him, but Benjamin is already at the church and insists Rob needs to hurry because everyone is waiting for him. Meanwhile, the hotel manager calls security to escort Rob out. Desperate to escape, Rob runs upstairs, searching for his room, hoping to find his wedding clothes. Along the way, he frightens a maid, who informs him that he's not in the hotel where he was staying. Realizing he's in the wrong place, Rob wraps himself in a towel and flees. Outside, things only get worse. A marathon is taking place, with thousands of people gathered in the area. Rob tries to slip away unnoticed, but his appearance causes chaos. A woman mistakes him for a troublemaker and reports him to the police, accusing him of harassing the runners. When police arrive, Rob tries to run, only to find himself cornered by both the officers and the hotel security guards. Left with no choice, he jumps into the marathon to escape. As he runs through the crowd, Rob's predicament is broadcast on live TV, causing even more embarrassment. Eventually, he's caught by the police. Frustrated and humiliated, Rob explains everything, including how he mysteriously woke up in the elevator without clothes. The police inform him that someone deliberately left him there in an intoxicated state. When asked if he has any enemies, Rob starts to wonder who would go to such lengths to sabotage him on his wedding day. Rob was completely at a loss about what was happening. Meanwhile, back at the church, everyone, including Megan, anxiously waited for him to arrive. Megan's father, Mr. Swap, and her ex-boyfriend Cody added fuel to the fire by claiming that they had always known Rob was unreliable and likely ran away to avoid the responsibilities of marriage. Megan, heartbroken by their words, felt even more disheartened when she received a call from Rob. On the phone, Rob explained the bizarre events of the morning, how he woke up naked in a hotel elevator and ended up at the police station. He apologized, saying he probably wouldn't make it to the church in time. As Megan processed this, the church bells rang, signaling the start of the ceremony. But before anyone could react further, something utterly unexpected happened. Rob suddenly experienced a strange glitch in reality. In the blink of an eye, he found himself back in the same elevator, completely naked, just like before. The scene unfolded exactly as it had earlier. The elevator doors opened, people stared in shock, and the same man started taking photos. Rob, now panicked, but realizing something supernatural was at play, quickly tried a different approach. Instead of running to the reception, he climbed through the elevator roof to avoid detection and grabbed a phone to call Benjamin. During their conversation, Rob discovered something shocking. The events of the morning had reset to an earlier time on the same day. Somehow, he had time-traveled back to the start of his wedding day. To make matters worse, no one else seemed to remember the previous sequence of events. Only Rob retained his memories of the bizarre loop. Determined to make things right, Rob decided to take control of the situation. On his way to the church, he encountered the famous singer Brian, who happened to be nearby. Desperate for clothes, Rob begged Brian for help, but the singer refused. However, one of Brian's girlfriends took pity on Rob and handed him a piece of her undergarments. Reluctantly, Rob put it on and hurried toward the church. This time, with his knowledge of the day's previous events, Rob knew what to expect and what he needed to do differently to fix everything. This time, Rob heads back to his hotel. As he approaches the entrance, he receives a call from Megan's best friend Vicky, asking why he hasn't arrived at the church yet. Rob assures her he's just getting dressed and will be there shortly. However, as he steps into his hotel room, the church bell rings again, and once more, Rob is transported back to the same elevator, naked, on the same morning. It finally dawns on Rob that he's trapped in a time loop. Every time the church bell rings, he finds himself sent back to the start of the day, reliving the same events over and over. Determined to figure things out, Rob quickly grabs a random bag from a man, uses its contents to cover himself, and hides in a bathroom. He calls his mother and explains the bizarre situation, insisting that he keeps traveling back in time whenever the church bell rings. Unsurprisingly, his mother doesn't believe him. Frustrated, Rob decides to call the church priest. He pleads with the priest to avoid ringing the bell for the next couple of hours so he can break the cycle and make it to his wedding. But before the conversation can go further, the dreaded bell rings once more. Time resets again, and Rob wakes up in the elevator, furious at his predicament. This time, he storms out of the building without bothering to cover himself and steals clothes from a passerby on the street. Dressed in ill-fitting clothes, Rob finds a bike and decides to ride to the church. However, since he doesn't know how to ride a bike, he crashes and is taken to the hospital in an ambulance. As the ambulance speeds toward the hospital, Rob notices it's passing the church where his wedding is supposed to take place. In a moment of desperation, he jumps out of the ambulance and runs straight into the church. Inside, Megan's ex-boyfriend Cody confronts him, berating him for showing up late and dressed inappropriately. Cody tells him he can't get married looking like that. Hearing this, something clicks for Rob. Perhaps the reason he's stuck in this loop is that he hasn't managed to make it to the altar on time and marry Megan. Determined to fix everything, Rob resolves that in the next loop, he'll focus on getting to the church on time, no matter what. Maybe, just maybe, that will finally end the time loop. In the next loop, Rob wakes up determined to solve the problem. First, he arranges some clothes for himself. To save time, he deliberately crashes into a pillar so that an ambulance arrives to pick him up. Just like before, he jumps out of the ambulance in front of the church and rushes inside. This time, he arrives on time for the wedding. However, just as Megan enters for the ceremony, the church bell rings again, and Rob finds himself back in the elevator, starting the day over once more. Frustrated but undeterred, Rob repeatedly manages to reach the church in subsequent loops. Yet each time, Megan's father, Mr. Swap, stops him, refusing to let him proceed with the wedding because Rob isn't wearing proper wedding attire. With no time to retrieve his own clothes from the hotel before the bell rings, Rob hatches a new plan. In the next loop, he asks for Cody's clothing size. When the day resets, Rob smashes the windshield of Cody's car outside the church and demands his suit. Cody refuses, and a fight ensues. Unfortunately, Cody is a skilled fighter, and Rob loses the brawl. Determined, Rob begins challenging Cody in every subsequent loop, learning his moves and studying his fighting style. After countless loops, Rob finally defeats Cody and takes his suit. Proudly dressed, he makes it to the church, confident that marrying Megan will finally break the loop. But luck has other plans. This time, Mr. Swap reminds Rob that he forgot the wedding invitations. As Rob rushes to retrieve them, the church bell rings again, resetting the loop. Over the next loops, Rob keeps forgetting critical items. Sometimes the wedding invitations, sometimes the rings, sometimes gifts. Each time, Mr. Swap sends him off to get what's missing, and before Rob can return, the bells ring again. Frustrated but persistent, Rob gradually perfects his preparation. Finally, in one loop, Rob gathers everything he needs and arrives at the church fully prepared. The ceremony begins, and the priest asks him, to say his vows to Megan. That's when Rob realizes, to his horror, that amidst all the chaos, he forgot to memorize the vows. This time, instead of rushing, Rob decides to use the loops to his advantage. In the next series of resets, he avoids his own wedding entirely and attends other people's weddings to observe and learn their vows. After many loops, Rob has memorized every line perfectly. With everything in place, Rob finally attends his own wedding again. When the priest asks him to say his vows, Rob delivers them flawlessly, much to Megan's delight. As the ceremony continues, Rob feels a glimmer of hope that the loop might finally break. However, just as the priest is about to complete the marriage, a flock of pigeons suddenly flies into the church, creating chaos. Rob's panic rises as the bell tower looms, ready to chime. Rob, desperate to finally break free from the loop, urges the priest to ignore the chaos caused by the pigeons and complete the marriage ceremony. His erratic behavior alarms Benjamin, who steps in to calm him down. But Rob, overwhelmed with frustration, snaps back, shouting, "Do you even know what kind of nightmare I'm living through today? And what you did to me last night?" Caught off guard, Benjamin angrily admits the truth in front of everyone. The night before, in a drunken stupor, he had taken Rob to a bar, and Rob had ended up at the hotel with another woman. This shocking revelation leaves the entire church stunned, and Megan, furious and heartbroken, decides to call off the wedding on the spot. Rob tries to stop her, pleading for forgiveness, but Megan slaps him in front of everyone and storms out. As chaos unfolds, a stray candle falls over, starting a fire in the church. Consumed by rage and desperation, Rob climbs up to the church bell, convinced that breaking it will end the loop. Scrambling to the top, he begins smashing the bell, but in the process, he loses his balance and falls. The bell rings as it crashes down, and once again, Rob wakes up in the same elevator, naked and back at the start of the loop. This time, Rob is struck by the realization of just how irresponsible he's been. Reflecting on his drunken mistake, he feels overwhelmed with guilt. Determined to make things right, he seeks out Megan in private, apologizing and admitting, "I don't deserve you. Your father was right about me all along." Megan, hurt and furious, lashes out. "You can't just leave me like this on our wedding day," she yells. "From now on, I never want to see your face again." Her words devastate Rob, who walks away feeling completely defeated. When the loop resets yet again, Rob decides he's had enough. He climbs to a bridge and leaps off, attempting to end his life. But instead of dying, he wakes up in the same elevator, alive and back at the beginning of the loop. Realizing that even death won't free him, Rob spirals into despair. He begins wandering aimlessly through each loop, avoiding the wedding entirely and isolating himself. In one of these loops, Rob finds himself climbing a tree outside the church, watching Megan from a distance. While perched in the tree, he overhears a conversation between Cody and Mr. Swap. To his shock, Cody is trying to buy out more than half of Mr. Swap's company shares. It dawns on Rob that Cody has been secretly orchestrating a takeover of Megan's father's business all along. Rob, unable to confront Cody without giving himself away, finds the loop resetting yet again. This time, he decides to revisit the same people he interacted with at the start of previous loops, hoping to figure out what to do and how he might save Mr. Swap's company. In one of the loops, Rob goes back to his hotel room. While there, he looks at the love messages Megan had sent him, feeling guilty and nostalgic. Suddenly, he notices a woman getting out of his bed. Startled, Rob asks who she is. The woman introduces herself as Callie and explains that they met the previous night when Rob was drunk. She claims Rob paid her to spend the night with him. Panicking, Rob asks if anything happened between them. Callie reassures him that nothing happened. Rob passed out shortly after getting drunk, and when she woke up in the morning, he was gone. Rob is left confused and uneasy. He remembers the police telling him earlier that someone had deliberately left him naked in the elevator. Now he wonders, who paid Callie and who set him up to humiliate him? The mystery deepens as Rob realizes he must figure out who is behind it all and why they went to such lengths to sabotage him. As Rob pondered the situation, the time loop reset again. This time, determined to find answers, Rob approached the hotel security and requested to see the CCTV footage from the previous night. Watching the footage, he was shocked to discover the truth. Megan's best friend, Vicky, had brought him to the hotel in an intoxicated state, stripped him of his clothes, and left him in the elevator before fleeing the scene. It all became clear to Rob. Vicky and Cody had conspired together to ruin his marriage to Megan. Their goal was to end the wedding, allowing Cody to marry Megan, and, with Vicky's help, gain control of Mr. Swap's company. With this revelation, afternoon, Rob called Megan. He told her that his day had been nothing short of a nightmare, but that he finally understood what was happening. He vowed to set everything right. When the loop reset again, Rob woke up for the first time knowing exactly what needed to be done. Rob's first move was to seek out the 2 police officers he had encountered in previous loops. Using the knowledge he had gained about them, he convinced them to escort him to the church. On the way, he used their phone to call Callie, the woman from the hotel, and asked her to bring his wedding suit to the church. Meanwhile, at the church, Cody and Mr. Swap were once again trying to convince Megan that Rob was unworthy of her. They even suggested that Megan marry Cody instead, but Megan, still holding onto her trust in Rob, refused to be swayed. Just then, the sound of police sirens echoed outside the church. Megan looked out to see Rob arriving, flanked by the officers. Rob quickly changed into his wedding suit and entered the church, ready to confront the situation head-on. Megan joined him, but Mr. Swap, visibly angry, began berating Rob. "You don't deserve my daughter," he said, urging Megan to choose Cody instead. Rob takes a deep breath and, in front of everyone, reveals the truth about Cody. He explains that Cody has been scheming to take over Mr. Swap's business and orchestrated the events of the day to sabotage the wedding so he could marry Megan himself. When confronted, Cody admits to buying most of the shares in Mr. Swap's company. Outraged, Mr. Swap storms out of the church. Rob follows him, pleading for a chance to prove himself. He promises to change for Megan and to become a responsible person worthy of her love. Touched by Rob's sincerity, Mr. Swap finally accepts him. As a gesture of approval, he hands Rob the same ring he once gave Megan's mother on their wedding day. With tensions resolved, the ceremony continues. This time, Rob speaks his vows for Megan from the heart, promising to cherish and support her forever. As the priest moves to complete the marriage, he pauses and asks if anyone objects. At that moment, Vicky steps forward, claiming she saw Rob take another woman to his hotel room the night before, but Rob is prepared. Calmly, he exposes Vicky's role in the conspiracy, revealing that she worked with Cody and even paid Callie to humiliate him. He assures everyone that nothing happened between him and Callie. Callie, who is present in the church, steps forward and confirms Rob's story. Faced with the truth, the crowd turns on Vicky and she is asked to leave. Cody, too, is forced to slink away in disgrace. Finally, the ceremony proceeds without further interruptions. Rob and Megan exchange rings and their marriage is completed. As the vows are sealed, Rob feels the loop break. For the first time, the day doesn't reset. This experience transforms Rob. The loop taught him valuable lessons about responsibility, love, and perseverance. He vows to live up to the promises he made to Megan and to become the person she deserves. And with that, their journey begins. A fresh start for Rob, a second chance to make things right. So if you ever found yourself in such a strange situation, waking up repeatedly in an elevator without clothes, what would you do?